Today we have some more actual history that took place in Kansas and other western states just after the Civil War. This was a time when many people moved west, and one of those people was a woman named Nellie Benthusen, who moved with her family to Newton, Kansas in 1872 when she was about 14 years old. Nellie would be accused by her classmates of committing petty crimes such as theft, and when she reached adulthood, many of the men in her life would end up dying under mysterious circumstances. We will be reading from the fall 1983 issue of Old West magazine. This story is titled, "The Black Widow of Kansas Beneath Her Beauty, She Was Deadly" by Charlotte Offen. So here is the story of Nellie Benthusen Bailey Reese, the Black Widow of Kansas. To some, she appeared like a pretty lady fresh from a Kansas farm. But to those who discovered what she had done with several husbands, she was the Black Widow of Kansas. Although Nellie Benthusen Bailey Reese posed as a lady to accomplish her desires, beneath the surface, she was far more complex and deadly. She was adept at disguising her real nature, and she was fairly skilled at writing. Had she wanted to, she might have become a successful author. But Nellie Benthusen chose a different life. Because she was so good at masking her past, much about her is not known. It is known that Nellie Benthusen with her parents and her brother Willie came to Kansas in 1872 from somewhere in the east. Where is not known, they settled on a farm near Newton, Kansas, in Harvey County, about 20 miles north of Wichita. Nellie's father, known as Old Man Benthusen, was a miserly figure, tight-fisted and grumpy, yet he prided himself on his honesty in dealings with neighbors and tradesmen. However, his two children, particularly Willie, were often labeled by those same neighbors as the thieving kids. This reputation was only the beginning of their mischief, and the name-calling escalated to unprintable expletives. Willie's petty thefts eventually evolved into more serious crimes, leading him to become embroiled in horse and cattle rustling. His insatiable urge to steal blinded him to the consequences, culminating in his arrest after he attempted to steal a fine yoke of oxen. The animals, plodding along at their own pace despite Willie's frantic attempts to hurry them, ultimately led to his capture and subsequent imprisonment. During Nellie's childhood, tragedy struck when her mother fell gravely ill. In a twist of fate, a striking young woman from the East, a possible acquaintance, was hired to nurse Mrs. Benthusen back to health. Old Man Benthusen, succumbing to infatuation, found himself enchanted by this young nurse. In a shocking plan to hasten his wife's demise, they concocted what they believed would be a lethal dose of strychnine, with the nurse arguing it would spare Mrs. Benthusen further suffering. However, the scheme backfired spectacularly. Instead of succumbing, Mrs. Benthusen violently expelled the poison and eventually rose from her sickbed, fiercely confronting her would-be usurper. Surprisingly forgiving, she refrained from pressing charges against her husband, perhaps recognizing his weakness for younger women. Nevertheless, she kept a vigilant eye on the strychnine bottle, intent on ensuring that Old Man Benthusen would pay dearly for his betrayal. Life under Old Man Benthusen's roof was grim, as he was notoriously stingy, rarely allowing his wife and children any spending money. But Mrs. Benthusen bided her time, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. When her husband was forced to embark on a 3-day journey to a distant town, she seized the moment. With the help of Willie and Nellie, she rushed to the wheat bin and scooped out several bushels of wheat. Willie took the wheat to town, selling it for a handsome sum, and returned home to a triumphant family. Together, they indulged in a lavish shopping spree, reveling in their newfound freedom. As Nellie matured into a striking young woman, her charm and beauty became undeniable. She carried herself with a regal grace, dressing elegantly and captivating those around her. At the tender age of 17, she found herself engaged to Alvin Lakeside, a promising young man from Newton. Ambitious for wealth and luxury, Nellie made the bold decision to jilt her fiancé, Alvin Lakeside. At the age of 20, she crossed paths with a young banker named Shannon Bailey, who was 35 and seemingly affluent. Little is known about him, but he invested in land in Newton and constructed a comfortable home for them. They tied the knot on August 9th, 1879, and it was evident that Bailey was enamored with his beautiful young bride, showering her with the finest luxuries, expensive jewelry, and exquisite dresses. In March 1880, an Englishman named Clement Bartholomew and his ailing wife arrived in Newton, making waves in the community. He purchased one of the town's finest homes, originally built for $10,000, paying only $7,000. Tragically, within months of their arrival, Bartholomew's wife passed away. As a man of means, he quickly mingled with the town's elite, and it wasn't long before Nellie Bailey, the wife of a banker, found herself drawn into his circle. Their friendship blossomed, raising eyebrows among the townsfolk. In the years that followed, it came to light that the woman Bartholomew had brought with him was not his wife, as he had claimed. Nellie, ever the restless spirit, grew increasingly dissatisfied with her life as a banker's wife. Noticing the change in her demeanor, Bailey suggested a vacation to rekindle their romance. They embarked on an extensive journey by rail to California, followed by a steamer to Oregon, eventually returning to San Francisco. There, they encountered a newlywed couple, the Lesbies, who quickly became friends. However, tragedy struck when Lesbie was found dead in their hotel room from a gunshot wound to the head, officially ruled a suicide. Despite carrying a significant amount of money, none was found with him. Nellie reportedly remarked that Lesbie's suicide left his wife a heartbroken widow. The Baileys continued their travels, venturing into Dakota Territory, where Shannon Bailey mysteriously vanished, never to be heard from again. Nellie claimed he deserted her, yet she soon inherited his wealth and property, suggesting he may have met a more sinister fate. With Shannon gone, the alluring widow, now free and with money at her disposal, set off to visit relatives in the East. Upon her return, she sought out Clement Bartholomew again, but his indifference prompted her to cast her sights elsewhere. Her journey led her to Waukesha, Wisconsin, where she met Robert Reese, the owner of a piano store. True to her nature, Nellie wasted no time, soon becoming Mrs. Robert Reese, despite his mother's vehement disapproval. Throughout this whirlwind, she continued to assert that Shannon Bailey was alive and had merely abandoned her, never bothering to pursue a divorce. After a few weeks of what appeared to be marital bliss, Nellie, citing property settlements as her reason, returned to Newton, leaving her new husband behind. Whispers of suspicion surrounded her. A dark cloud loomed over Robert Reese. Was he yet another victim? Later, when news of Nellie reached him, Reese traveled to Wichita to confront her, discovering many secrets that had been kept from him, dispelling the rumors of his murder. Back in Newton, as Nellie prepared to settle Shannon Bailey's estate following her marriage to Robert Reese, she wasted no time rekindling her connection with Clement Bartholomew. Previously, he had transferred his ranch, known as in Holdings, to a mysterious Sarah A. Laws. Now, however, he bestowed it upon Bertha Bartholomew, purportedly his sister, although the deed remained unrecorded. This wealthy Englishman, possibly connected to the Churchill family in England, left his ranch near Sedgwick, Kansas on August 22, 1884, bound for Texas, marking yet another chapter in this web of intrigue. Clement Bartholomew sought a more expansive range for the over 2,000 sheep he was bringing with him. Accompanied by a young woman he introduced as his sister, Bertha Bartholomew, she claimed to have arrived by train from the east in early June and had been residing at the Bartholomew Ranch. Whenever she appeared in public, Bertha donned a mask and dark glasses, stating it was to protect her delicate skin from the harsh Kansas sun and wind, to ensure both he and his sister were comfortable. During their travels, Clement fitted out what he called a house car. In a letter to a friend, Bertha described their unique setup with excitement. "I wish you could see our outfits. Clement has spared no expense in fitting it up. It's a lovely one, I tell you. We have a car built on wheels with one stylish room. We've got 2 yoke of oxen to pull it, which we'll only use when we camp. We even have a cow with us. Clement and I each have a riding horse, and I plan to ride horseback all the way." The ambitious young couple also had 2 young boys, Dotson and Vetter, hired to assist them, one to drive the car and the other to manage the sheep. Bertha was thrilled about their adventure, expressing a longing to explore Indian camps and document their way of life. However, everything changed on the early morning of October 7, 1883. The tranquility of their camp was shattered when young Oscar Vetter was jolted awake by Bertha's frantic cries for help. "Something terrible has happened. Hurry to the car," she urged. Dotson quickly dispatched Vetter to investigate, but when he returned, he reported finding nothing unusual. Yet Bertha insisted that Bartholomew had been shot. Determined to uncover the truth, Dotson ordered Vetter to search again, despite Vetter's fears. "You coward!" Dotson shouted, jumping on Vetter's horse and rushing to the house car himself. Inside, he was met with a chilling sight. Bartholomew lay on a spring bed, shot through the head, his left hand resting limply across his chest, with a pistol lying nearby. At dawn, Bertha and Vetter rode to Skeleton Ranch, owned by Ed Collins and Jim Donaldson, where they claimed Bartholomew had taken his own life and sought permission to bury his body. A makeshift coffin was quickly fashioned from packing boxes, and Bartholomew was laid to rest. In a hurry to move on, Bertha mailed a deed transferring Bartholomew's ranch and holdings to herself back in Newton, instructing that the blood-soaked bedding be cleaned and any unusable items burned. At this point, they were about 150 miles from Wichita, Kansas. After 5 days of travel to Texas, their expedition was abruptly halted by a United States Marshal and 5 deputies who arrested them in their camp. Upon arriving back in Wichita, Dotson and Vetter were released after being deemed innocent victims caught in Bertha's web of deceit. But Bertha, now recognized as Nellie Benthusen Bailey Reese, was a different story. She had grown up in the Halstead-Newton vicinity, and whispers surrounded her. It was rumored she had murdered 3 men, Bailey, Lesby, and her last alleged husband, Robert Reese. She was held for trial in U.S. District Court, and it would be over a year before her case went to trial. Unable to post bail, she spent that time behind bars. Meanwhile, legal heirs in England claimed Bartholomew's estate, including the sheep, ranch, and cash on hand. In addition, 21 large trunks were discovered in the house car. Nellie fought fiercely to claim these trunks, asserting they were hers, and they were said to contain luxurious silks, satins, velvets, and jewelry valued between $2,000 and $3,000. When Nellie finally stood trial, the courthouse overflowed with spectators eager to witness the proceedings. 3 skilled attorneys defended her: W.E. Stanley, who would later serve as governor of Kansas, T.B. Wall of Wichita, and Joseph W. Addy of Newton. Nellie, embracing her role as the tragic heroine, portrayed herself as a victim of circumstance, claiming Bartholomew had enticed her into their dangerous liaison and promised her a life of luxury in Texas. The defense countered, revealing that Bartholomew had a legal wife and children back in England. The transfer of his property to Nellie was argued as an attempt to deprive his true family of their inheritance. The woman who had accompanied him and later died was never identified. Despite a wealth of witnesses from the prosecution recounting Nellie's tumultuous and immoral past, the jury ultimately delivered a verdict of not guilty in late January 1885. While her attorneys feigned belief in her innocence, suggesting that Bartholomew had committed suicide, those familiar with her past continued to view her with suspicion, branding her a murderer and a thief. Following her acquittal, Nellie capitalized on her notoriety by writing and publishing a book that extolled her virtues, solidifying her legacy as one of the most enigmatic figures of her time. The Life of Nellie Bailey, a romance of the West, was released as a chaotic mix of tales, most of which stemmed from Nellie's vivid imagination. Her long confinement in jail and the loss of many friendships seemed to have a sobering effect on her, and she was never again accused of murder. Yet, Nellie couldn't resist finding other ways to secure amusement and financial stability. Wealthy men continued to fall into her intricate webs of charm, and so long as they paid for her attention, Nellie had no qualms about reaping the rewards. She used the notorious Badger game to maintain the lavish lifestyle she desired, luring men into compromising situations and demanding hush money to keep her secrets and their reputations intact. The final records of Nellie's life reveal her still at the heart of this scheme, seemingly having the time of her life. How long it lasted, no one really knows. This brings us to the end of our episode on Nellie Benthusen Bailey Reese, the infamous Black Widow of Kansas. suspected of killing three men: Mr. Lesby, who was known to carry large sums of money, her banker husband, Shannon Bailey, and Clement Bartholomew. Nellie was never convicted of murder, though she did spend a year behind bars awaiting trial. Ancestry records hint at another chapter in her life. Nellie reportedly had a daughter, Beryl Cecilia Benthusen, born in 1895, who took her mother's maiden name. In 1901, Beryl married Hiram Hunt Henderson in Chicago, and they welcomed a son, Robert Lee Henderson. In 1908, the year Nellie would have turned 50. Nellie's own life ended in Berkeley, California, in 1938. Her brother, George William Benthusen, possibly the Willie from our story, apparently turned his life around as well, becoming a medical doctor after his time in jail. Much like Nellie's later years seemed to shift her focus. We cover the fascinating, gritty details of real history, stories that mainstream history channels overlook in favor of tales about aliens, pawn shops, and reality TV. If you want to support our mission to bring you stories like Nellie's, consider joining our Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. For $5 a month, you'll gain access to exclusive content, plus a special acknowledgement at the end of each episode. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time.